I should warn you before you step inside the house. This could change the course of your entire life.
I'm not afraid of a couple ghosts.
Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our channel, Paws On Animation.
And today we're covering the Haunted Mansion remake from 2023.
Now this movie takes the original film and gives it a darker take, as a mother and son are being haunted by ghosts and can't go anywhere without it following them.
It's
anyone
dark.
who steps into the house remains haunted as well. But
Before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, click occasionally some future podcasts on World of Paws videos.
yes, thank you for joining us, subscribing, sharing our videos, and commenting. We appreciate you so much. This film takes place exactly 20 years after the initial one in 2003.
Yes. And this one we had heard was coming for a few years now, but we thought at some point they just decided to abandon the project. But nope, didn't abandon much of anything now when it's profit to be made. So the idea was for this particular remake was to not lean in towards so much of comedy. With the original version of Eddie Murphy, some felt like it was leaning too hard into comedy, not enough into the horror aspect with the ghosts and things, like it was a joke. So they decided, okay, when we remake this, we'll have humor in it, but it's going to be a heavy emphasis on the ghost being a threat.
Yeah.
And being a threat and not a joke, but taken more seriously and more dire consequences.
So this actually was released at Disneyland on July 15th, and then to the rest of the U.S. on the 28th. So they got to see it first. The running time was 123 minutes, so a little over 2 hours. The budget was 150 million. I don't know why. And the box office was 117.5 million, so it was a failure.
Yeah.
So I don't know why Disney doesn't learn not to invest so much money in these movies. If they had made it with a third of the money, then it would have been a success.
Right.
So in this version, you have a mother and son.
Right. Instead of a large family like
Yes.
the original.
Correct. And I don't know why they decided to reduce the family, but they did.
I guess that was the modernization or something.
Now, originally, Guillermo del Toro was supposed to write and produce it. And then he went ahead, because it was in development hell, and it ended up going to someone else.
Oh, that probably would have been a more interesting take,
I
though.
think so. So it was directed by Justin Simeon, and the screenplay by Katie DePaul, and produced by Dan Lin and Jonathan Elric. So yeah, I can't imagine just how different it would have been with Del Toro doing it.
Right.
And also, Disney may have decided they didn't want to pay him.
That's true. It's possible. And this was also made to be a Disney Plus exclusive movie. And then they said to release it in July.
Well, they also have the attraction, so I guess that was supposed to support the attraction.
Oh.
So lastly on that, he was supposed to write, produce, and he was going to have it take place in a heightened reality rather than a real world setting. So I guess
okay.
Disney decided they wanted something different. It got wished, and this is what we have.
Yeah.
So, as we mentioned, it's now a mother and a son, and then you have other people who end up coming. You have a fake priest. You have a guy she's going to end up being with.
Yeah.
You have a medium who's not a fake. And you have all these other people, and Danny DeVito, who end up coming into the movie. And yes, they have some comedy, but as you mentioned, it's more focused on the supernatural. It's darker. And then they have some elements that are supposed to be horror, but really, to me, they're not. It's more supernatural comedy.
Yeah, especially when they have the points where the supernatural entities end up coming to life and you actually see them. For a while, for almost half of the film, the spirits in the movie are never seen. They're all invisible. You hear some voices, stuff moves around. It was the cheap way out, Disney. And then when it gets towards the climax and get into the final battle with the villain, yes, there's a final battle. Then they start appearing, and you can tell it was just heavy use of special effects.
Yeah.
There really were not any people in costumes. They just used completely special effects.
And the cast, they've got a good cast, but it's almost like they decided they only wanted the acting to be at a certain level.
Right.
So you got Lakeith Stanfield as Ben Matthias. He's an astrophysicist turned a tour guide, and the movie opens on him, how he met his wife, And later on, when we see them later, the wife has passed, and he's like this curmudgeon-y guy who's not an elderly guy. He's older, and he's kind of bitter and disillusioned because he wasn't able to prove the existence of the supernatural.
Okay.
You have Rosario Dawson, who plays the mom, and she's supposed to be a widow doctor from New York who moves in with her son, played by Chase Dillon. We've got Owen Wilson as Father Kent.
Yes.
Jamie Lee Curtis as Madame Leota, who's the psychic. And actually, her role in here is twofold, which you'll see when you watch it. Jared Leto as Alistair Crump, or the Hatbox Ghost, and I kept thinking Danny Phantom.
Yeah, it's the Hatbox Ghost.
And Mary Lou Henner as Carol. She was a tourist in New Orleans, and it's so funny. She used to be really big back in the 70s, and I remember seeing her in other stuff that my mom watched. So as soon as she came up on screen, I knew who she was. And she didn't have a big role, but because of whom she is and her history in Hollywood, she got top billing in the beginning and a screen credit.
Right.
So that was actually pretty neat. So Winona Ryder also appears in here as a tour guide as well. But she isn't credited, which is really funny.
Right, go figure.
So the movie isn't bad. It's very different from the first one, as we mentioned, but it's not a bad movie. It's got some parts that could have been better. And if those parts had been better, the movie would have been better. It's an interesting take on the original story. And they got a good cast.
Right.
But they couldn't make up for the pit holes in the script itself.
Yeah. And to me, I think the biggest problem is a similar thing what happened with Thor. It's a 2-hour film, a slightly over 2-hour film, and it suffers from a plot that's clearly meant to be shorter. The first half is drags. It's not terrible, but you can tell it drags. They're trying to get to the point. Everyone that comes to the house, they get haunted. They all got to come back because the things won't leave them alone no matter how far away they go. Trying to figure out what's happening. And then the second half comes in where they finally get in contact with these creatures, I'll say. And all the mayhem starts, and you find out what the villain wants. It's got a sort of vendetta on these people, and they have nothing to do with it. And that's when the story became the most interesting. It still had some holes in it, but at least it was finally having some type of leg to stand on. And it seems like it always gets to the second hour of these 2-hour films of Disney where that becomes the most interesting.
Right.
And the first hour is nothing but setup. But for some reason, Disney is determined to keep making 2-hour films that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And the one time they make a 90-minute film, there's literally nothing there. So it's like a time issue with all of their stories right now, which is a weird thing.
I agree. The second thing that counted against it, I think, is it should have been released in October.
Yes.
Why the heck are you releasing in July to tie in with a ride?
It didn't make any sense.
That ties into the third problem.
Yes.
It came out the same time as Barbie and Oppenheimer. Of course you're going to lose.
Yeah, I think they thought they were going to be the big 3 of July of that year, and that did not happen. People forgot.
You had no
one even wanted to see it.
It couldn't even stand up to Barbie and Oppenheimer. That was one of the dumbest decisions this marketing team made.
Yeah.
It should have come out in October.
And people kept thinking that.
It would have done better because amidst all the horror movies like Terrifier and other stuff, you would have had this more lighthearted fare that delves into the supernatural and has what they call a little bit of horror, but it would have been something for people who don't want to go to Terrifier right and to the hardcore horror. It would have given them something else to choose. And
Right.
it would have done better because of it being released in October
Yeah.
and being lighter fare.
And I remember.
But some dumb butt person made a decision to put it out in July.
And I remember some people were talking about that and talking about Disney Plus, and when they mentioned Haunted Mansion, they assumed, oh, it comes out October. No, they re-released in theaters in October. It came on Disney Plus in July, and the people said, but that makes no sense to do. People forgot it existed until they re-advertised and then watched it. So, yeah, that's on them of just some really poor marketing choice. The most obvious decision to make for a haunted house movie, you put in summer. And it's not like a summer horror movie.
If you remember in season, is it 3 of Stranger Things. They did the same dumb
Make
thing,
it a summer
putting
thing.
it out in July instead of October,
And it's
and
like,
it failed miserably. And that was one of the big reasons it didn't do as well.
yeah, it's not like Jaws where it's made specifically in the summer and can be released in either time of the year. It's specifically centered around October.
So quickly want to go over a few of the reviews because they pretty much state, I think, how our general audiences really felt. It scored pretty low, getting 2 out of 5 stars, and they're saying that the stellar cast couldn't save the laborious story of a creepy old dwelling and the awful hatbox ghost. Another said while the visual effects are surprisingly weak for a film of this scale, the script proves far better than anyone might expect, establishing an emotional foundation for what might otherwise be a gimmick-driven haunted house movie.
Right.
And the last one comes in the Washington Post saying, and I think this pretty much sums it up, it's too dark for a family film, too weightless and juvenile for grown-ups. In a season notable for high-level action spectacle and important archer projects, Haunted Mansion is not just confused, but inconsequential.
Yeah.
And again, putting it out in July instead of October is what really costed its failure.
Yes.
So if you've seen Haunted Mansion 2023, let us know in the comments. If you've seen the original, let us know as well. If you'd like for us to cover the original, let us know in the comments. If you haven't seen it, as Rascal says, it's on Disney Plus. You can get
And
it at your
DVD.
and you can get it on your library on DVD. And it's not terrible. If you're looking for something just to fill in and maybe watch it, I would say save it for October.
Yeah, which is beginning to be some of their movies now. It's like, okay.
Yeah, save it for October and watch it then. Come back and tell us what you think.
And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates and weekly videos for your anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely. And thank you again so much for joining us, subscribing, and saving, and sharing our videos.
Well, saving our videos too. Download
and
them.
we appreciate you more than you know. And as always,
You are special. Thank you so much for watching Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a toontastic day.
Peace.